Hey, welcome to Hot Takes. I'm your host, James Scott, here to analyze anything and everything interesting. Let's dig into today's topics.
So I feel like we have to kind of talk about this. So like the way that James and I record this podcast is we meet over Zoom, we talk about what the episode's going to be about, what we're planning to talk about and stuff like that and everything. And so it seems like Zoom has added this new feature where they added a voice that just says this meeting is being recorded, and it just like it takes us by surprise every single time that we hit record and we get ready for an episode, and we just
Recording
both
in progress.
yeah, the recording is in progress, and it's like we just both stare at each other like, did you hear that? Like, well,
I mean, I watched Terminator, like a couple of them earlier today, so I'm just like dun 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 dun.
yeah, so you're ready. You're ready for the machines. You're absolutely ready for the machines. I, however, am not. I did not prepare myself for Terminator.
Oh, they started in Silicon Valley. Now they're coming for Arizona. They'll get you next week, okay?
They'll get to me by next week. Yes, they'll make it to the East Coast. Well, I mean, if that's not an intro to an episode, I don't know what else is.
We're nuts. We're off the rails. Goodness gracious.
Oh my goodness, James, what's new this week?
Oh man. Well, Yasiel Puig got into his first fight in the Mexican League, and it was amazing.
I feel like I saw this somewhere.
Oh man, it was it was a typical Puig moment. So first off, the pitcher who like looks all of like 17 years old or something like that. Absolute string bean of a kid throwing, probably 95 miles an hour, something like that. He looked like he was one of those types. So maybe 93, I don't know, but oh my God. So like this is the Mexican League. Okay. This is not big league baseball, but like so I was almost gonna say Pujols. That's another guy I want to bring up in a moment, but yeah, because something happened really interesting with Pujols earlier this week as well, which is kind of fun. But Puig comes in there, right, and he takes a pitch. I don't know if it was mid at bat. I think it was actually mid. No, it was mid at bat. What am I talking about? So he takes a pitch mid at bat, right, that is like low and away, and pretty clearly, if you had a major league umpire in there, that's a ball. Okay. In the Mexican League, you can frame that, you can get that called for you. But so they framed it, and Puig kind of just stands in there, and the umpire takes forever, mind you, with this call. So umpire comes in, strike. But meanwhile, before the umpire can even get into his strike call, Puig starts pointing at where the ball went. And basically saying, throw me a strike, throw me a strike. The umpire just called the strike. He's like, throw me a strike. I want something to hit. And like literally the bench is cleared over this. Because Puig was so angry about not getting a strike. And like you guys, like all y'all know, okay, I love Puig. Puig's my guy. I'm not even that upset at him here. This is a guy who's doing everything he can to make his way back to the big leagues. And, if you're going in there pitching against Puig, the eyes are on you too. You're not pitching around Puig unless it's a situation that demands that, Puig wants to be challenged, just throw strikes, dude. Do you want to impress anyone around you? So I would be a little bit frustrated. Puig should be in the big leagues. He should not be playing in the Mexican League. I don't know whether he's starting off slow. That also can add to frustrations. I don't know. I mean, it's Puig, so it could be Puig being Puig, but also at the same time that like, if you're in the Mexican League, you're close to the big leagues. You're like in AAA. You're in a AAA level league. So I just challenge the guy, man. I mean, I guess, you could also write it up to the pitcher just being wild, but like, you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying. No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Now to move on to, the other player with the name last name that begins with a P, Pujols. So Pujols has been with the Dodgers for like a week now, 2 weeks now, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's already having like pretty big moments. Like if we're being honest about Puig, like or not Pujols. Man, I'm switching both of them up today.
You
We're being
are.
honest about Pujols. Pujols has had like a couple like really big, like not necessarily hits, but moments where they either could have been hits or they were hits
Mm-hmm.
already in Dodger uniform, like this early on. However, former Yankee Mike Tauchman robbed Pujols from a game-winning home run the other day in the interdivisional matchup between the Giants and the Dodgers. So that was definitely something that I want to bring attention to because I went and I saw an Angels game. You know, I told everybody about this. You know, we talked
Mm-hmm.
about this here as last game that Pujols was, you know, an Angel for. In center field, they have a thing up for how many home runs, you know, he's at on the home run list. Depending on how much lineup protection he could get for the Dodgers, he actually might be able to ascend more slots on that list than we're used to. He's going back to the NL, which is where he's more comfortable anyway. He's getting more lineup protection because the Angels were injured and, you know, not completely on all cylinders at that point in time. The league doesn't really know him, and yeah, no, Pujols absolutely represents a fantastic fit on the Dodgers. I think he really balances out their lineup, especially Muncy. Muncy being that clutch, patient lefty that is really, really, you know, big in the playoffs. And now Pujols, in theory, in that playoff lineup in his last year in the show, he could be a really big factor. So those are the main things that I wanted to bring up this week. That Pujols may actually play a factor this year. I haven't really seen it been talked about anywhere. Like, you know, most people say that he's just joining the Dodgers to be like a bench piece.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he could actually play a role in playoffs. I think he could actually be an effectual player. Doesn't mean that I think he's a top 200 or top 250 player or anything like that. I don't even think he's a top 20 first baseman. I don't even think he's a top,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like he's probably a bottom 5 first baseman
Yeah,
as is. It's just because of who he can be in those big moments, he might have a very big role with a team like the Dodgers. So keep your eye out for that, especially with how well he fits their lineup. Him and Muncy are literally made to bat back to back with each other. It's literally a perfect combination. Whether you're going to use, I would use that probably going into the bottom part of the order, 6, 7, you know, and then you have your pitcher 8th, and then you turn it over with the secondary leadoff hitter in the 9 spot. Because remember, NL no DH this year, so. But I mean, that's probably how I just do things at this point. I mean, you got to remember that the Dodgers are getting a few people back healthy, and Gavin Lux has been really doing well for them. Pollock is doing well for them. Taylor is doing well for them. Betts is Betts. You know he's doing well now, but you know he's going to come around the corner as the season progresses. Will Smith has gotten better as the season has gone on. I think he's starting to prove me a little bit wrong with the bat, but not necessarily by a lot. Maybe by like 3 or 4 percentage points. Because I thought he was maybe like a 126 WRC plus, and he's closer to a 130. But you know, I think that's just a little observation that I want to make about the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers are just so loaded. And Chris Taylor, he had like a 17 pitch at bat the other day, and then had a bases clearing. I think it was a double. I mean, Dodgers are loaded. They're absolutely loaded. I think Justin Turner's starting to turn it on. No pun intended. But yeah, no, those are the main notes for the week. Mainly Dodger notes. That's interesting because Puig started as a Dodger, you know, so just interesting Dodger notes to start the week. So Chris, we were talking about this like on the pre-show, and I realized that, you know, we were going to do a pitcher show where I talked about specifically the pitchers that made the preseason list. And I realized that I never completely got around to that. So I figured, you know, I mean, before it gets like straight into the middle of June and whatnot, I mean, I'm kind of like, how did we not get around to that, you know, and whatnot? But I have I have the preseason list, So I'm going to first bring up the guys that are still good. Then I'm going to bring up the guys that got good and, on my current list, jumped onto it. And in addition to that, I'm going to bring up the guys who I thought were going to be really good and completely failed. We talked about this a little bit on, I believe, our last show.
It was like 2 shows ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's start with relievers. So the relievers that I had on my list, I had Chapman. That's an obvious one. I had Emmanuel Clase. He's a stud for Cleveland. Walks a little bit too many, but like tons of ground balls, throws 100 miles an hour. You got Josh Hader, stud. You got Mark Melancon. He was a guy who I've been big on a while, like for a very long time. But Melancon, in recent years, like his underlying analytics have not looked good. But he's never been a guy who succeeded because he's like so dominant in strikeouts. He's always been a guy who got weak contact, and that's how he's been able to be as good as he's been. Then we got Richard Rodriguez, who's emerged as an incredible closer for the Pirates this year. I would like to say that was one of my best relief calls of all of these guys. Edwin Diaz, I thought that was a fairly straightforward one. Liam Hendricks, another straightforward one. Ryan Presley, another straightforward one. I did not call Craig Kimbrell, which I that's one that I obvious miss. I should have had him on there. Saw the higher levels of walks. I saw the recent performance, and I thought he was just starting to be done. But no, I think he's got a few more years in him, especially with how dominant he's been this year. I did not call Ian Kennedy, and I did not call Matt Barnes. So those are 2 more closers that have really emerged. No, the main 3 closers that I missed that are the elite ones are those guys. As far as guys who jumped onto the list. Now, the relievers that I thought were going to be really good that ended up not really being so good are guys like so far Jake McGee, Brad Hand, Sean Doolittle, Raisel Iglesias, Aaron Bummer, and Devin Williams. So a lot of these guys, it's mainly because of walks, and a lot of the others have been mainly home runs. It's a trend that we've been looking into, specifically this year with lefties who have breaking balls that are from high and away to low inside. You're seeing, I think, because of balls, the density of the baseballs has changed. And we talked about juiced balls and the effect of the balls in the league. I don't know if I've talked to you about this, Chris, but think about it this way, right? When the balls are more dense, right? What's going to happen to the seams? When the ball's juiced, the seams are going to be risen. When the ball's not juiced, the seams are going to be lower. So when you have guys who have breaking balls that move that way, they move that way because they have so much spin. So now they don't have the same amount of cut because the seams are not as raised. So those are drifting into the strike zone, specifically from lefties in a league of power hitting righties. You're going to get torched if you can't get those to sharply break. So you're seeing across the board pitchers who throw that pitch literally getting lit up. Not the best of the best, but like even, just decent arms. And I think they're going to have to make an adjustment or just like get stronger as the season goes on to put the amount of rotations in order to have that kind of effect that you'd need. So they're either going to need really big second halves to make up for how they started, or I don't know, we'll have to see how that develops. But it's definitely an observable trend of a whole bunch of really good left-handed pitchers who are having the same problem with the same pitch with a different ball. And I think it's the seams. I think it's the amount of rotations that you could put on the ball when the seams are raised versus, So, and that in relation to handedness, with a league of power hitting righties, they stay away from mainly lefties these days because they hit them straight into the shift. So they, you know. But yeah, as we move into middle relievers, these are the middle relievers which I've been successful about with the calls as well. Now, first thing I want to note here is the players that were clear misses, the Devin Williamses, the Aaron Bummers, the Raisel Iglesiases, the Doolittles, the Hands, a bunch of those, the McGee's, a bunch of those aren't closers, but I'm kind of throwing them all into the same group. And I wanted to name the closers first and kind of separate them out that way. For middle relievers, actually, I think, isn't Taylor Rogers now moving into the closer role? I think that's the official thing. He's been alternating with Colome. I remember that was the plan early on in the season. So he might now be a closer. So there's that. And I think Karinchak actually might have rotated in with Class A and replaced him at this point. So I'm going to have to update that. But Trevor May, he made my early season list. Giovanni Gallegos made my early season list. Drew Pomeranz made my early season list. Blake Treinen made my early season list. Seth Lugo made my early season list. Although he'll be back from injury if he's not already. I don't think he's back yet, though. O'Day, he'll be back soon or within the next 3 weeks. Zach Britton, who he'll be back also right around the same time. And I think that, even 40 innings out of either of those two guys, O'Day or Britton, given the caliber of reliever that they are, it's going to be enough. So even though they've been out for a while, I still have them on the list as guys who I'm pretty sure are going to be fine because they've been fine their whole career. Got Yusmeiro Petit, who's one of my favorite relievers. A lot of people completely underrate him because he's a weak contact guy. The underlying statistics say that he shouldn't be nearly as good as he is year in, year out. 1 year, it's going to be really ugly. Thank goodness it's not this year. 1 year, the weak contact's going to go to hard contact, and he's going to have nothing left to lean back on, and it's going to be really ugly, but not this year. Gratterall, who I believe had a scoreless inning in AAA recently. So Brusdar Gratterall of the Dodgers, he's going to be up, another Dodgers player. He's going to be up playing for the Dodgers probably within the month. He's another guy right up there with Britton and O'Day, where I just think he's just going to dominate. And even though O'Day and Britton, they have a whole career of doing that to lean back on, Gratterall reminds me of Jabba Chamberlain. I don't know if I've seen anyone with that kind of stuff in the middle innings without being, 6'4", 6'3" in years. I mean, he's very compact. He throws strikes. He throws hard. He throws with movement. He throws with confidence. And he seems perfectly fine with just getting outs and not relying on the strikeout, which in my opinion makes him even more dangerous. Because we contact. I mean, he might be able to go at best 2 innings at a time, maybe. Although with his injury history, I think you might want to lay off that a little bit. He's too special of an arm. And then, yeah, that's all of my relievers from before the year. So I did pretty good as far as relievers go. As far as starters go, Chris, should I do it reverse? Should I name the starters who I've been completely wrong about first?
Yeah, go reverse.
All right, so we got Dylan Bundy. Total miss on him. Strikeout rate's there. The walk rate's there. He's just allowing way too hard contact. So that sucks. Patrick Corbin. He's another one of those lefties with the breaking ball that moves that way. Let me just rattle those guys off. So Corbin, Snell, Dallas Keuchel, Drew Smyly, Madison Bumgarner, who's had moments of really being good, and I'm sure he would have been able to continue them if not for being that type of pitcher. And those are the starters. If we're looking back at the relievers that I just went through, the relievers that missed that have that same issue: Sean Doolittle, Brad Hand, McGee, maybe. I got to look into that. Maybe McGee. So it's really a common issue this year. So I think it has something to do with the balls. So outside of all of those guys, Snell he's missing the zone all the time. Keuchel, he's not getting any sort of swings and misses. Smiley is just not doing seemingly anything right. And Mad Bum is alternating having like 5 really good starts with like some really, really genuinely terrible starts. So that is what it is. So outside them, Charlie Morton has looked like a shell of himself. I won't say complete shell of himself, but like close to a shell of himself. This is a guy I thought was going to be a top 15 pitcher, and he's been closer to like a number 3 starter, which is, I don't mean number 3 starter like as in the 3rd best starter in baseball. I mean like a number 3 starter in his own rotation. That's not good. That's not good. And at his age, it does make sense. The fastball velocity has declined a little bit, so that does make sense. And he is a guy who got by with a lot of spin, and the seams going down in addition to the velocity going down. It's a double, 2 factors. And Kyle Hendricks, he's allowing way too many homers, walking more than we typically expect from him, and striking out. He's Kyle Hendricks. He's not going to strike out a ton of guys. Then we got Luis Castillo, who's not doing anything right either. He's reverted into being basically a 2-pitch pitcher because, his 3rd pitch has no movement on it now, and he's not getting swings and misses. So the strikeout rate is down. Home runs are up. He's got no good defense behind him. It's a total mess. It's a total mess. Kenta Maeda is similar. He's not getting any weak contact, and he's not getting any swing and miss. So 2 factors again. And those are like all of the main misses as far as starting pitchers are, involved. And if we're talking about, big injuries for either relievers or starting pitchers that impacted things, Tommy John surgery, James Paxton, although truth be told, if James Paxton was playing, he'd probably have the same issue as all of those other lefties because that's his breaking ball as well. And then Jordan Hicks of the Cardinals, he may even end up playing. I hear that he's getting a plasma treatment on his throwing elbow instead of trying to, get a second Tommy John in a row. But, who knows if that's going to work. So they're going to get him that treatment. Then it looks like they're going to give him like a month and work his way back. But I don't know if that seems like the best idea for a guy with his level of talent, but we'll see. We'll see that if it works, then he can jump back onto the list. He's a guy who could throw 100 and whatever miles an hour, 103 miles an hour. So now let's talk about the guys who jumped onto the list that I was not expecting to be this good. Taijuan Walker. I mean, I liked the guy, and we talked with, John about him actually. And, I've said this about him. He doesn't really care about how he gets outs. He doesn't care about walking people. He doesn't care about, he doesn't really care about those types of things. It's all about just getting outs. It's not about, anything but getting outs. Like he's completely okay just kind of walking, like his walk rate is basically half his strikeout rate. That's a problem, okay? But at the same time, he's getting so much weak contact. No one's hitting home runs against him. Nothing that's hit into play is doing anything. His ERA, I believe, is in the 1s or low 2s. He was a former top prospect, so this was clearly like on the board, but he's developed into a really unique pitcher and probably a more dangerous one because who's to say he can't, improve control and command from here. And now you have the strikeouts, you have the weak contact, and then he's not walking anyone. So you're looking at a really special arm. So completely missed him. Great arm. I should have had him on here. Then we got Freddie Peralta of the Brewers, converted reliever. He was in the minors, actually, he was a starter. And they kind of just let him go this year, and he's been incredible. Another guy who hasn't really cared about how many walks he's been getting, but it's more because he's reaching such a high number of strikeouts. It's not necessarily been about just getting outs the way it has been for Taijuan Walker. So Freddie Peralta also a miss. He's part of probably the best 3-person rotation in baseball, like as top 3, if you're going to call it anything in baseball, which involves, Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns, and him. So outside of Walker and Peralta, then we got Carlos Rodon of the White Sox. Missed on him. I thought he was walking a little bit too many, and I thought that, too much could go wrong with the profile, so I didn't feel comfortable betting on it. He's been absolutely incredible. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the same thing for the last 2 guys too. I just didn't feel comfortable betting on him, betting on either of those approaches. I was wrong. Then you got, I believe, is it Alek Manoah? Yeah, I think it's Alek Manoah, not Alex Manoah. Someone told me it was Alex Manoah. I'm like, no, I think it's Alek Manoah. He went up against the Yankees the other day and massacred them. And yeah, he did the same thing to them in spring training with their A lineup, with an even healthier lineup than what they have now. And he was incredible in AAA leading up to that start. All these scouts, including myself, have been raving about him. I think he's going to do fine. I think as long as he maintains, this consistency with how he's been approaching games and attacking hitters, I think that he absolutely has to make this list. And I think this is more of I know what he's going to do moving forward, and based off of what we've seen and based off of his AAA numbers and scouting report, so on and so forth, that I know this is going to be a miss for me because he's tracking that way. So I'm counting it. And then we got Pablo Lopez of the Marlins. Absolutely did not expect him to be this good. Absolutely did not expect an ERA in the 2s. Incredible. Like a lot of spin, hits locations perfectly. People have a hard time squaring him up. He's absolutely jumped onto the list. I completely missed him. Completely and utterly missed him. Now, if we're talking about all of the starting pitchers that I was right about, you got to remember, I put Bundy on the list because I had Gausman on the list. Gausman did great last year in a small sample size. Bundy did great on a small sample size. So that's how I called Gausman. So instead of saying, oh, how'd you call Gausman? Well, I called Bundy too. I was wrong about him. So I was about 50% right on those 2 guys who I viewed at roughly around the same level. I was wrong about one, clearly, very right about the other. DeGrom's an easy one. Scherzer's easy. Strasburg will be back and playing enough this year. We're not worried about it. He actually is back. What am I talking about? He's got 2 starts in, maybe 3 now. Whatever. Darvish, ace. Corbin Burns, believe it or not, I believed that last year was for real. I had no clue he'd be anything close to this. I thought he was going to be a 2-starter, and he's been a clear number 1. I thought he was going to be a guy who could kind of in the right rotation would be more of an elite number 3, and he's been a 1. So even though, I called him, I did not call this. Joe Musgrove, my boy. Yes, another guy. Dinelson Lamet, he's going to continue to have a low ERA as the season goes on. He's tracking well. The injuries have kind of gotten in the way, but he's fine now. So it is what it is. Buehler's been an ace. Bauer. Syndergaard's going to play enough, in my opinion, for the rest of the season that if you're going to have Britton and O'Day on the list, you're going to have Syndergaard and Severino on the list. So Severino, same. Wheeler's been awesome. Stroman's been a weak contact pitcher, been amazing. Zach Gallen, I think he's going to play enough this year that there's another guy. Carrasco, same deal. Chris Bassett, love the guy. A bunch of my friends didn't like him as much as I did. Aaron Nola, obvious one. Woodruff, I thought, was going to be a 2, and he's been a 1. So another Brewers starter that exceeded my expectations. All three of them. Freddie Peralta, Woodruff, Burns, absolutely exceeded my expectations. Ian Anderson, Lance Lynn, Kershaw, that's an easy one. Bieber, Cole, easy ones. Flaherty, Julio Urias, even with the limited amount of innings, like I said, if you're going to put Britton on there and O'Day on there, then you kind of got to put Julio Urias on there, even with the innings limit. At the very end of my list, like at the very last edits, I added Glass now because of the third pitch. And again, this is before opening day, mind you. And I added Trevor Rogers because he had such a killer spring training. And because last year, he had only really had like 2 bad starts, but it affected the whole year because starting pitchers don't play that much and, shortened year. So believe it or not, they made my list, but they were at the very bottom of my list. Hyun-Jin Ryu, that's an obvious one. Max Fried actually called his breakout last year, so I kind of hung on to him. And, I was worried he was going to be another one of those lefties that was completely messed up because of the breaking ball, but he came back from his injury and he's been pretty darn good. So I'm still counting him. I think he'll be fine. Framber Valdez, who I thought he was going to be out the whole year. Remember we had this conversation about how does Framber Valdez break a finger and he's out the whole year? Well, he's back. So completely terrible reporting. Don't know what, what are you thinking? So Valdez, he made my preseason list initially, but I was like, injury. Ugh. So there's a guy. Giolito, it's interesting. Giolito, the first 5 starts, 6 starts, something like that, was terrible. And then the most recent few starts, he's been incredible. If you divide it up month by month, basically since the calendar month changed, he's been fine. So I was worried about him being a miss. No, he's going to be a good hit for me. Then you got Jameson Taillon, who's not doing well now, but it's because he has everything working for him post Tommy John, except for the command. So he's throwing in the zone. He's just not throwing where he wants in the zone, and it's getting tattooed. So he's been working on it a lot more recently, improving in short order. Then we got Michael Kopech, one of my favorite pitchers in baseball, throws well over 100 miles an hour. I didn't know whether he was going to be a reliever or a starter. He's kind of gone between both, but I'm counting him right now as a starter because in the playoffs, he's probably going to be used as a starter. I don't know. Maybe they'll use him as a reliever in multiple innings, but he's amazing, throws over 100 miles an hour. A lot of attitude. Love it. So I've been right about him. Rich Hill was also one of my late ads, mainly because, when you're looking at pitchers, right, certain pitchers are weak contact inducers. Rich Hill is one of those guys. He always has been. So he's always going to have a lower ERA than his analytics show. So if the strikeout rate's there, the walk rate's there, weak contact rates are there, you should expect an ERA similar to what he usually does. And those rates are there. And Tampa Bay Analytical picked him up. So expected more of the same. I was worried because he's a lefty pitcher with that breaking ball that he was going to be another one of those guys that I missed on. Not the case. He's gone off recently. And, Rich Hill's basically become a baseball meme online for whatever reason. So Rich Hill. So he's on the list. Michael Pineda, I've been watching this guy's whole career. ERA's gone down each of the last few years because just like, Rich Hill, he doesn't really – actually, it's really more like a couple of the other guys on the list who don't get as much strikeouts. Pineda just puts it in the zone and tries to get weak contact. He doesn't even care if it's not ground ball contact. As long as he's just getting outs, that's all he cares about. So a little bit like Walker, but with less strikeouts and less walks. That's interesting. Very similar to Walker, actually. So Pineda's been fantastic this year. Kluber, around the 2 months that he's going to miss due to injury, has been fantastic. So he's another guy that I was big on before the year. Of course, I was Yankee fan here. So that's another guy. Sixto Sanchez, I think is going to get called up and be really good this year. Same thing with Nate Pearson. Both of those guys were guys where I was just kind of being like, well, with the kind of pitcher that they are, the kind of prospect that they are, Sixto with his first big league performance being that good, despite not really 100% being ready, and with Pearson being a guy who throws like 102 miles an hour as a starter with 3 working pitches, at least 3. I figured that this year they were both going to get enough time at some point later on in the year to really put in some production. Then you got Zach Greinke, who split basically all of his starts between bad and really good. So as the year goes on, look, he's Zach Greinke. He's going to be the same guy. Then you got Jesus Luzardo, who frankly, there's just not been enough playing time around the injury. And then Tristan McKenzie, who uncharacteristically is walking the world. And recently he had a really good start because they were threatening to send him down and then someone got injured. So I think McKenzie, he's going to put the pressure on himself. He's going to stop pressing and he's going to hit the zone a lot more like he did in the minors. As long as McKenzie can stay healthy or at least, get his numbers back where we know the numbers can be, McKenzie's still in line to basically be the guy we want him to be. It's just it might take quick send to the minor leagues, 3 starts in the minor leagues. Like basically, you send your car in to get a tune-up, right? It's the same kind of deal here. Send him in, you get a little quick tune-up, and he comes back, and now he's firing like a Ferrari. You know what I mean? Like like a sports car. So I don't think the walks are for real. They came out of nowhere, and that's all of our pitchers. That's everyone. So I'd like to think I did really good with regards to the pitching.
You did.
But then I go and I look at the misses and I'm just like, but again, like a lot of these misses, nobody could have seen coming at all. Like almost like half of them. Corbin.
You never know. You never know what's going to happen. Corbin. It's like,
yeah. All right. Well, that's what I got for today, Chris.
I mean, that all sounds perfect to me. Before we wrap up, don't forget, hit that subscribe button, head on over to the YouTube, make sure you hit that bell, hit subscribe, stay tuned, join us on our live streams. Our live streams are always great, and we're going to try and do sound effects next time.
I'm down. See you on the next video.
Later.